everyone, welcome to Grad Australia's Career Talk session. My name's Emily and I'll be your host for today. So before we begin today's session, I'd just like to begin with an acknowledgement of country. As we gather for this meeting, physically dispersed and virtually constructed, let us take a moment to reflect the meaning of place and by doing so recognize the various traditional lands on which we do our business today. We acknowledge the elders, past and present, of all the land we work and live on and their ancestral spirits with gratitude and respect. We extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. I'm joining the call from Brisbane, which is the traditional land of the Turrbal people. So to introduce myself again, my name is Emily and I'm one of the webinar hosts at Grad Australia. For those of you who don't know what Grad Australia is, it's a graduate career site where you can explore and get to know graduate employers. You get a backstage pass to see what it's like working in a role at their organization and how to apply for programs that best fit you. When you sign up to gradaustralia.com.au, you also get notified of open applications and opportunities that you can apply to. So it's a great site. So today's session is called Navigating a Career in Tech, How to Break into the Industry, Ace Your Interviews, Have a Successful Career in Tech, and more. So we'll be covering everything and more in that area. And we are very lucky to have two guests joining us. So from SAS, we have Jacky Long, who is the Advisory Solutions Architect. And from Cognizant, we have Bradley Hester, who is a Senior Manager in Consulting. So I'd just like to pass it over to Jacky first, just to give a little introduction about yourself, how you got to where you are today and who you are.
Thanks, Emily. My name is Jacky Long. I work in the global technology practice at SAS. For those of you who aren't aware, SAS is the largest privately held software company in the world. I support the Asia Pacific region, and I specialize in analytics and artificial intelligence. Currently, I work with organizations around the globe to implement the Model Ops process. Specifically, I focus on a lot around responsible and socially responsible artificial intelligence. I have an undergraduate degree in quantitative analysis and an MBA in economics and policy. Obviously, I have a funny accent for a lot of you. I grew up in the United States, in Chicago. And I've worked in all kind of industries: healthcare, oil and gas, banking, government. I began as a programmer and I pretty much evolved from there. I love what I do, and I'm really lucky that my education and my experience have brought me really to exactly where I want to be right now. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Jacky. And Brad, would you like to give a little introduction as well?
Yes, thank you. So my name is Brad Hester. I'm a senior manager here at Cognizant. I'm actually part of the technology consulting team here. So Cognizant as an organization worldwide, we've got around about 330,000 people worldwide. You probably don't hear too much within Australia, but that's changing. We actually are building quite a strong team here in Australia. But the role that technology consulting that I play within Cognizant is we actually work with our clients to try to understand some of their business problems that they have, and then work on how can technology actually help them to not just enable their teams, but actually solve some of their business problems as well. My background, I started off as a analyst programmer many years ago, and I actually worked my way through analyst programming, and then I joined one of the big banks in Australia in about year 2000, and I was there for 18 years. I was there, and there my role changed very much from that analyst programmer to a support lead, and then I became an architect, an enterprise architect, and then I've transitioned from that enterprise architect role, and my role is very much that of a cloud and integration architect. So I work a lot with the public clouds of Amazon, Google, and Azure. And my actual focus now is how do I actually start building up teams to be able to start so that they can actually leverage those capabilities as well. So thank you, Emily.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for the introduction. So for anyone watching, we have a bunch of questions that we'll be going through. But if you do have any questions at all, definitely pop them in the chat. This is the time to ask questions. Literally anything you want, about tech, ask it. This is your perfect opportunity to do so. So just to get started on the questions, I'll start with a super general one, which is what led you to tech? So I'll start with Brad for that one.
It's a funny story. There's the one I actually tell people often is how I got into tech. And again, I'm probably showing my age here. Back in the early 80s, there was a movie that came out called Tron. Now, at the time, it was the first movie that was ever written with using computer graphics in any meaningful way. And the whole story was about a person getting lost in a computer program. And I've got to admit, that got me interested in technology as a whole. And since then, I've basically been a part of technology. I've been coding since I was in primary school. And it's really just something that just kept going throughout my life.
Awesome. That's crazy. Coding since primary school. That's crazy. Jacky, would you like to share how you got into tech or what led you there?
I got into tech, again, it was a bit of a morph. That I started out, my undergraduate degree is kind of mathematics and business and computers. And for me, though, that combination of the math and the computers is kind of like a puzzle. So it's fun to me to have a concrete answer, to get to a concrete deliverable. So I also started out as a programmer. I think that the industry itself has expanded since then. When I started, analytics weren't as mainstream as they are today. People didn't have the faith and the trust in them that they did today. So I started out programming systems. And then when I combined that with my business knowledge and my business education, it enabled me to do more applied, create more applications with the programming. So it kind of shifted into, okay, now the programming is a part of it, but it's really the business outcome that I'm trying to create using the programming or the software. And then actually ending up at a tech company, I had worked for several different health consultancies, insurance companies, and then I actually was recruited by SAS because of the experience I had using SAS. So it was kind of a organic transformation for me, which is why I said earlier I'm so lucky, because I really like what I do, and I know a lot of the folks on the phone, hopefully you'll be that lucky, because things will change. A lot of people end up in tech that don't have a tech undergrad. A lot of people will get a tech undergrad and then shift into something slightly less technical. So go with your gut and what you enjoy, and you're going to spend a lot of time doing it. So have fun with it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jacky. I think there was a bunch of things you mentioned at the end that we'll definitely be diving into later, about how you can study one thing and then end up in a completely different field. So
Yeah.
That's awesome that you mentioned that. Got one last sort of general question before we deep dive in a bit more into tech, which is, what do you think makes the tech industry stand out compared to other industries? So I'll go to you first, Jacky, for this one.
I guess I think that the skills are very transferable. So I feel like there's a lot of job security, because if you get in an organization that you're not happy with, there's a lot of options out there. I think the money, it's appealing to a lot of people. I'm not going to say that you're going to become wealthy, but it's a solid paying career. And again, I kind of mentioned earlier, I like the concrete deliverables that come around, that you can see what you're building, you can see your results, and you can look at a problem and take it to fruition. I guess the only other thing I would add is that now it's so much more respected. It used to be a bunch of geeks in the back room, and now it's very mainstream. Everybody's in tech, everybody's familiar with tech, everybody's comfortable with tech, so that's a plus.
And Brad, do you have anything to add to that?
I do. Some of the things that I found that really attracted me to technology is the ability to create and to be able to express new ideas. It's not an industry that's locked in a way that says this is the way you do it and this is the way you will do it and this is the only way to do it. There's actually more than one answer to any problem. And the fact that we're able to use technology, and one thing I'll probably say a fair bit, is that technology isn't the answer, it's the enabler to the answer.
Yeah.
So it still comes down to people doing the work that people do in there. And it's not just the programmers who are part of technology. And that's one of the things I love about the technology, is not just one group of people. You're actually working with quite a diverse skill set of people that you're within the industry and within your organization as well.
Awesome. That's the perfect segue into our next question, which is, talking about the different types of careers you can have in the industry. So I think for a while, a lot of people had the misconception that tech is just technical careers, whereas there's a lot more careers that, you can have, like marketing, sales, so many others. So to start off with that question, what are the different kinds of non-technical careers in tech? I know this can be very broad, so we'll just try give it as much of a general overview as we can. I'll go to Jacky for this question.
I guess there are, again, the idea of using the technology. So you might have a non-technical job that's, you might be the industry expert of how to use and how do you apply technology in your industry to solve business problems. There's obviously sales with respect to technology. There's sales support with respect to technology, marketing. There's also this idea, and I'm just going to refer to it as a storyteller, that you need to be able to understand the technology, how you're going to use it, as Brad mentioned earlier, to be creative and to solve problems with it. But then from a non-technical perspective, you have to be able to explain that to people who aren't tech savvy. Or so you have to almost serve as a liaison and have the magic decoder ring that helps people understand what the technology can do. And that comes with sales, with a sales engineer, whether you're customer support. So there are a lot of things where you may not be hands-on with the technology, but you are communicating that to others.
Awesome. And Brad, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just a couple of things there as well. Just within the tech industry, it's not just people coding. There's a lot of practice work that's required there. So what I mean by that is there are methodologies that you use in a lot of tech work, which is agile methodology. So you have Scrum, and then you've actually got the practice people that go along with that. You've got your Scrum masters, you've got your product owners who are there. But one of the things, technology all still comes down to people. And one of those big things about people is the experience. So how do people actually use the technology is actually something which isn't actually a real technical background that's needed. What you need to do is to understand how people use technology rather than the actual technology themselves. But then also to extend beyond that as well, you still have other more holistic roles, which are both tech and non-tech. So you have like the change managers, for example, the change managers who actually work with when technology is actually implemented, how does that change the day-to-day work of the people who are impacted by it? You've also got the business analysts who are there to try to understand what's the problem that's trying to be solved. How do you actually break down quite a large problem into smaller digestible problems that can actually then be worked with the technical people to be able to come up with a solution in there? It is a very diverse field, yes.
Yeah, it's definitely very diverse. I think there's no way to ask that question and cover all the careers because there's so many different ones.
Right.
So I'm going to hit you guys with another hard question, which is, what are the different kinds of technical careers in tech? So I'll go to Brad for this one first.
Yes. Granted, the first one there is the analyst programmer. Is the actual the role, and even the role of the programmer has changed very much in the last 10 to 15 years. The role where the programmer used to be the person who would put on their headphones, they'll go lock themselves away and they would just code, those days are pretty much gone now. And a programmer is now expected to be an interactive person, not just be part of the team. So they actually need to be across quite a significant amount of technology work. You have the architects and the solution designers who their role is to actually take a complex business problem and then come up with what's a technology solution for that. And then in a way that a programmer can actually start to digest and start to action on that. You also have the other technical roles. You have the testers and tester capabilities of how to actually automate your actual testing, how to actually get what you're trying to actually achieve and actually verify that it's correct, that it's actually working as expected. And the roles are actually changing very much with security as well. There's a lot of technical aspects around security, and the big part around that security is how do you embed that in the development life cycle now? It's now gone from a point of, we have this service, now we need to apply security to it. It's actually changed now where security is a part of that very beginning phase. So you've got security people who need to work on that. You've actually got DevOps. I'm sure many people have heard the concept of DevOps, which is the breakdown between the operations team and the development team of how to automate that work in there. You might have your analyst programmers doing the actual coding, but then you have your DevOps engineers whose role is to actually come about and actually automate it to try and make things go as fast as possible. You have your data analysts and your data engineers to start taking some very complex data algorithms and how to codify that in a consumable way. There's probably so many more that I could go into, but I'd like to hear what Jacky, some of the roles you have in SAS.
No, that's okay. I think you've covered a vast majority. I was going to mention the user design, all of those, but I also think, there's hardware engineers, there's systems administrators, there's all those types of positions. The other thing that I would highlight is Brad and I both work for technical companies, technology companies. There's also all kind of options that are in private sector organizations, government agencies, education. So what Brad and I do is create technology that solves problems. But there's a plethora of options also in non-technology based corporations that use the technology that Brad and I create. So there's, model developers. You might be involved in model development. You might be involved in the digital transformation for your company. You might be a web developer. Maybe you're creating external apps that the customers interact with. So there's kind of two paths. One is a technology job in a technology company, and then there's also using technology within a non-technology company and understanding how to make that work. There's going to be accounts payable, accounts receivable. There's going to be analyzed. So you might be creating the technology that processes that information, processes healthcare claims. So it's really limitless, but those are non-technology companies where you're still going to be in a very technology related role.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So moving on to our next question. This is kind of what you touched on before, Jacky, about how, there's a lot of people who end up in tech who weren't even from tech, like they didn't study it. So let's talk a little bit about that. So my next question is, how can people break into the industry from a non-tech background? So I'll go to you first, Jacky, on that one, and then we'll go to Brad.
I guess for me, I think you want to understand, if you want to move over there initially, take the industry you're in and understand how that industry uses technology. And once you do that, then you can start to kind of explore options with respect to that technology that you think are of interest to you, that you think would be fun. And then I would try to position yourself to get involved, insert yourself in those processes. There's, so that you can raise your own awareness. There's the obvious things, upskill, network, networking events, all of that kind of stuff. That's a little more obvious. Like, how do you know what you want to network in? How do you know what kind of additional classes you want to take? So learn about, in your existing world, how do things work and what's of interest to you from a technology perspective. And then again, try to position yourself, try to get more involved in those projects and understand what the options are and which path you would like to explore. Because you may have to explore one or two as well. You may not find it the first time that you try something.
Awesome. And Brad, did you have anything to add to that?
Very little. That was an incredibly awesome answer there, Jacky. The only thing I could like to add is skills can be learnt. So skills aren't what make you as you are right now. So as Jacky had suggested, if you're not in a non-technical field looking to move technical, find out how technology is actually used and then learn that. That's what's valued, and it's always going to change as well. I mentioned before that technology is always changing. So the fact that you're actually starting to learn something now is actually putting you in good stead for the future, because that's not what's being used. It's either going to be used or there's actually work to be done in there. So really, I would actually just focus on the work that you can do as part of a team, and know that you're actually going to be part of a holistic team to go through. And I think that's probably the most important trait I'd actually suggest to looking to move into tech, is to say it's not something you can do on your own. This is something that you will be part of a team to do.
Yeah.
Awesome. And on that note, we do actually have a question that just related to what we talked about. So I'll pop that up on the screen. So it's just, how can people who switch to the IT industry from management or another industry have success in the IT industry? And then it's a little bit after that, but I believe that's the main question. So we did just touch on that, but was there anything that either of you would like to add to that to answer this question?
I think the answer Jacky provided, I think, has a lot of that in there to talk about. Even if you're in a management, understand the business processes that are in play and the technology that's used as a part of those business processes, and then start working with your technology teams as well. One of the things that where my experience is where I've seen non-technologists move into technology careers is to actually start working with the technologists on the actual business problems at that point. Be that liaison between the technology to wider business teams in there, to be that translator in between. And as time goes on and you start working with the technologists more and more, your skill set will start to grow. And then over time, you'll be able to start doing that yourselves. And then you can then not only have those direct conversations with your business, the wider businesses, but you can actually start working with directly and start talking the language of the technologists as well.
Awesome. Thanks for answering that one. We'll continue on, but yeah, if you guys have any more questions, just pop them in the comments so we can make sure we, answer them. If you've got any questions around interviews, jobs, navigating graduate careers, literally anything, just pop it in the comments. So moving on, we'll just chat a little bit about startups and corporations, because there's a lot of tech startups out there now, but then there's also a lot of large corporations. So do you have any advice on how graduates can determine whether they should go into like a tech startup or a large corporation, and what are the differences between the two? I'll go to Brad for this one first.
I've sort of racked my brain on how to actually answer this one, because I don't think there's one answer to say, is this a startup? And it actually evolves over time, and there's actually no reason why you can't do both. So take for myself, I'm actually involved with a startup at the moment. I've been involved with that I had been involved with that for a number of years, but I was still working. I still had an enterprise career while I was doing that. So the way I would actually, the advice I would give for if you're a graduate is, where are you looking to actually start to build your career? If you're looking to start to build something from scratch, and you're actually looking to say, well, we actually don't even know what the answer is at this point, startups are probably the lead in that area. However, if you're wanting to start to build up that experience of an enterprise, how do you do things within an organization? How do you work within a team? How do you actually work to actually start understanding a much bigger picture? Then that's probably where a more corporate would come into it. But I don't think there's one answer. And I don't even think that if you've made one choice, that actually prohibits you from the other. I would actually say there's no reason why you can't do both at the same time.
I'd love to ask as well how it is that you managed to do both, and how these, graduates can do both.
Yeah. It was.
You have a superpower, Brad.
It was more of an agreement that, look, during the day, my focus was on my day career. That's where it was. So I wasn't able to do anything after that. But on weekends and evenings, that's when I was actually able to start offering the time to that work as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's great. Like, if you think about it, you have you could easily fit in like 2 hours every weekday and still get, enough time for downtime and whatnot. So, and that's a big thing. A lot of people with side hustles, and a lot of people I know as well who are from non-technical backgrounds, and they're trying to get into tech, and they'll actually just be coding throughout the week after their, normal 9 to 5. So definitely no reason why you can't do both. Yeah. Jacky, was there anything you wanted to add to that question though?
I guess the only thing that I might add is take a look at where your comfort zone is. And I agree, there's no reason you can't do both. And maybe you want to do a little of both to find out what your comfort zone is. But I think that startups are probably very fast paced. They could be a little chaotic. There's not a lot of structure because you're figuring things out, you're creating something from scratch, and they can be very innovative. And some people thrive on that, which is wonderful, but we need those kind of people. If you're somebody who's maybe more comfortable with a little more structure and knowing what to expect day to day, maybe having a somewhat more defined job role. I think in a startup, you probably become a bit of a jack of all trades, where you have a little more defined role. If you're in an organization, neither one of these are good or bad. It's just where you feel like you're most comfortable and you will feel the most rewarded.
Actually, that's a very good point, Jacky. Yes, that in a startup, there's no defined role. You are expected to be the jack of all trades, to be able to start doing a lot more than just a specific piece of work.
Yes, I've been in startups, and it's definitely like you set your work. I think it's also great for someone who has potentially like a bit of an entrepreneurial mindset, because you get to really come up with the ideas yourself. You get to turn whatever part you're working on into kind of like your own thing. But then, there's also a lot of benefit with going enterprise, the structure, the network as well that you get to build, the, learning actual skills and not teaching yourself at times is really valuable. So on that note, what do you guys think of the graduate programs, and what kind of value do you think SAS and Cognizant offer in their graduate programs that are really useful for graduates? So I'll go to Brad first for that one.
I think one of the things that we found, like within our graduate programs here at Cognizant, we don't have like this is what we're looking for, and you're basically pigeonholed in that role. The idea is we give you a breadth of experience across the whole organization. So it's the opportunity to work in different parts of the organization, to actually try and use that time to try and understand where is it that you feel that your strength is, where is it that you're most comfortable at, so that then as time goes on, we can start looking to work to get that work focused towards yourself. We start off with we do have some class learning to start with, but that's more to get an understanding of the organization as a whole and how we do things. But then you'll be starting to moving out into the teams, and then start working in anger on initiatives and working directly with clients as well. So our graduates tend to become very productive very quickly within here in Cognizant, and that you will be expected to start delivering and start being able to work with our teams fairly quickly.
And Jacky, what about SAS's graduate program? What can they expect from that?
It's similar to what Brad's describing. The other benefits that I can see that are maybe Brad's as well, I don't mean this is SAS specific, but that those individuals, when they do that initial class training, learning about the organization, learning about our software, that they are pretty much together for many weeks at a time. So they build these relationships that then when they go into different parts of the company, they don't feel alone. They're introduced to other individuals and we help them along, but they still have this group of people who feel like they're in the same position. So it might be in different countries, it might be across the world, but they all have this shared experience and they're going through the same things together, and they can bounce things off of each other, even if they do, as Brad said, they might be experimenting in different roles. So I might be working as a cloud architect and someone else is working as a model developer, but you're going to run into some of the same issues when you're just starting out and you don't know anybody at the company. So there's a camaraderie that exists. And even as employees at SAS, we did that where we spent like 6 weeks, and I started 25 years ago. We spent 6 weeks, and I'm still really good friends with people all over the world that started at the same time I did, and it brings something special to the job.
Awesome. And I'd just like to talk about career progression as well. So they've done their graduate program. What kind of career progression can they expect at SAS? I'll go to Jacky first for this one.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, and I probably won't get a thumbs up for saying this, but it's not going to be as quick as you think or as you would like for it to be. I'm going to put that out there, and I won't be well loved for that. You might, again, as we've mentioned, need to experiment with different roles. I think, and Brad might have comments on this, but I'm also a firm believer I want to be happy in my job every day. So I would say to people that you need to consider whether you want to go into management or not, because people have a preconceived notion that even if you start into tech, in order to be successful, you need to move onward and upward, and that somehow is more important or has more status. And I just think it's different. I think I have been in management in the past, and I've decided for me personally, I feel more rewarded as an individual contributor. And that's not to ding management at all. So, Brad, this has nothing to do with you. I just don't want people to feel pressure to go into management. You can be really happy, really successful, and have a lot of fun as an individual contributor. So I'd say be patient with yourself. And just, I also think going straight out, when you first go in, I don't know, just think about what is best for you, and don't follow all the social pressures of what you think you should be doing or what your job title should be. If you come into work every day and you're happy, that to me is the most important thing. Sorry, that's probably not the answer you wanted, but.
No, I think that's perfect because, you are doing it for years. So you definitely want to make sure you're happy. And I actually, I think a while ago, I actually was looking at something and I read that if someone is actually promoted too quickly without the skill set that they have being reflective of that, it's actually detrimental to them because they skip a bunch of critical learning phases that they were supposed to go through in order to be good at the next step. Mm-hmm. So that's always something I'm really conscious of as well. So I think that was really great that you mentioned that, Jacky. It's important to understand that as a graduate, you do need to make sure you master something, and then you're not just like jumping, because that can be detrimental in the long run. So Brad, I'll go to you now.
Thank you. I agree with Jacky that it does take time to progress. I think people might have heard of something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where if you're in something for a short time, your confidence is actually quite high. I think my advice is to be mindful of that there is a lot of things that go on in an organization behind the scenes. It's not just all technical solutions that go through. But what I would actually call out, though, is that the actual industry has changed a lot over the last 10 to 15 years. As Jacky called out, there used to be a position of you would come along, and then to go higher, you need to go into a management role. That's actually changed very much now. So now with not just architecture, but more development as well, you have the concept of principals that have come out. So you might be an engineer, but then you've got the concept of a principal engineer, which is like, think of that as someone who's not management, but is a subject matter expert in their field, and they have the specialization in there, and they're seen as a thought leader in their team, in their ecosystem. And then even beyond that, you've got the next role, which is what's called the distinguished engineer. Now, this distinguished engineer is think of that as almost like your chief engineer within an organization, your chief developer. So that's the person who's seen as like they're the thought leader within the team. They're the one who we should be actually, if we've got an idea, we should bounce that off that role to actually make sure that we're correct. Now, whilst you can move into management, my title is senior manager, and yes, I am a people leader as well. But I need to be hands-on. If I'm not hands-on, I'm not happy. As Jacky said, it's very important to be happy. So don't feel that you should progress into a role just because you think it's an advance. Be happy where you are as well, because there are opportunities. If you want to stay technical and not move into a management role, there are opportunities for you to be able to display leadership and that thought leadership and start providing guidance for your teams as well. But also, the industry don't think just because you started in a role those are the only ways of growing your career. You can move sideways. You can actually start saying, well, I might have started this role as a business analyst, but now I'm going to become a developer within the team. Or vice versa, you might have started off as a developer and now said, well, I'm actually more happy doing security architecture work as well and starting working on the cyber controls. So it's the progression is not just up, but also think across as well, as the number of opportunities, especially in large organizations. You're encouraged to be happy and you're encouraged to actually start, how do you actually grow as an individual as well? And that doesn't just necessarily mean up, that can mean across.
Thanks, Brad. I think that was really interesting because I have heard a lot that, it's a lot easier to move into different places when you're in a company than into a different company. So for example, like I'm in marketing. If I wanted to go into like sales, it'd be a lot easier for me to do that at Grad Australia versus another company because I don't have sales background. And I've seen that with a lot of technical people I know as well. So that's awesome to hear. So before we talk a little bit about advice for the recruitment process, we do have a question in the comments. So I'll just pop that up on the screen. It's a little bit, okay, so it's a bit long, but it's just about what are the things that new graduates can do to enhance their network and how can they grab the attention of potential employers, as in to prove themselves. Yeah, so that's basically the question. Do you guys have any advice on how new graduates can enhance their network and how to grab attention of potential employers? For example, like LinkedIn, or is there any other platform you'd recommend or tactic?
I've actually got one that I'd actually recommend a great deal, and it's something which I actually am a part of as well, and that's meetup communities. Meetup communities on different skill sets meet all over the nation. And where it is, it's where like-minded people come together. So my advice would be to start going to those community events and start talking to people. In many roles, when organizations are looking for people, one of the big things is actually leads that come through. So it's not so much we put an ad in LinkedIn or something and we wait for people to come back. Quite often our talent teams are out in these organizations and in these communities talking to people, trying to find out who's actually interested and having conversations. It really comes down to conversations. So my biggest guidance there would be to start getting involved in those local communities. And then that starts getting you exposed and start having these conversations with these subject matter experts. And then your name starts to get known. And when your name starts to get known, then people start to notice you when you're doing work in there as well.
Awesome. And Jacky, did you have anything to add to that? Oh, sorry, Brad.
Go ahead.
I was only going to add one more thing. And if you are a developer, if you have a public GitHub repo of some of the work that you've done, make that public. Because if you're talking to a technology organization who's actually looking for developers and you're a developer looking for that, if you've got a public repo, that actually gives some of their subject matter experts within those organizations a chance to see what you're really capable of. I always find it's a lot easier to read code than it is to read requirements. So if someone can actually start reading your code, that's how they can actually understand what sort of a developer you're going to be.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad. And Jacky, did you have something you wanted to add to that one?
Not much. I think I like Brad's ideas about the meetups. And then, in a similar vein, if there are user group meetings for a variety of, or there are also even just people who like to get together and do those things in the meetups. The only other thing I might suggest, and this would be more to pull out of your pocket in an interview, would be if you have done work someplace that then you can showcase. Maybe find some place to volunteer. If you love animals, go to an animal shelter. See if you can help them with their systems. If you like something else, pick your hobby. If you like athletics, find a sporting team and try to do something where you're going to be learning and you're going to get a taste of the real world. And then you're going to be able to pull that out of your back pocket at an interview and say, I've already been working with real world problems. The other thing, depending on the university, I would explore what kind of options they have as far as placement and things like that to find out what opportunities are, things like internships ahead of time.
Thanks, Jacky. And yeah, just to add to that question, I think another great thing is also to reach out to people. If there's an organization you're really interested in, contact someone that you look up to from there. Yeah. Ask if you can have, maybe like a 10-minute chat with them because you kind of like aspire to be where they are. And that's something that I think would flatter a lot of people. And it also puts in kind of like this good word for you as well, because you are someone who took the initiative and is clearly really passionate about that company. So that's a good thing to do as well. Check out Grad Australia, because we do have a bunch of resources on actually how to grab attention and, a bunch of career advice that I think would answer a lot of your questions as well. So talking about, standing out, let's talk a little bit about the application process and any advice we have around that. So before we get into the advice part, would you guys be open to just share what the application process is like at both of your companies? So I'll go to Jacky first.
I think it's fairly typical in that there's the initial screening of resumes that come through. And then from there, I said typical, now I'm going to say it goes out in a million directions because it depends what the job is. You're going to have an initial phone screen from someone. And if that is successful, then depending on the kind of job, then you'll probably meet with the manager for the role. And then after that, you will probably have some type of a panel interview. If you're in a highly technical, my job isn't as much coding every day. So if someone comes in for a job on my team, they're not going to be asked for code. However, if you're in different parts of the organization, you will need to provide code. You'll need to provide some concrete evidence of the skills. But so generally there's the initial screening of the resumes. Then you'll have a phone call. Then you'll have an interview with the manager. Then you're probably going to have a group interview. And Brad's brought this up a couple times. And I think it's important that when you come to work in technology, this is a team sport. Everybody's bringing different things to the table. You have to be integrated. You have to coordinate. You have to collaborate. I have to hand things off to Brad. They need to work when I hand them to them. I need to understand what he requires. So those group interviews are a big part of moving forward in the interview process.
Great. And I'll hop over to Brad now.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much how Jacky explained. That's pretty much exactly what we have here at Cognizant as well. You start with the screen, then you'll have an interview. Then if you're successful, you progress to the next. And then if you are in a very technical role, there will be some more technical questions that are going to be put to you in that respect, where you will be actually put into some situations. But and then after you're moving through there, then you'll start to find out how do you fit. When you get to that last interview within Cognizant, that's very much more about how do our leaders actually see you as a fit to the team at that point, rather than your actual technical skills. Because as Jacky said, that's the important thing. It's how are you going to fit as part of the team is probably the most important aspect of the interview process.
Awesome. And Brad, do you have any advice on how candidates can stand out during the interview process, or just any tips and tricks that you would like to share?
I do, and because it happens, the ones who say do this are the ones that really stick out, and it's the ones when you're actually talking about, you're going to be asked about times where you've been, like a situation you've been in. My advice is to actually articulate the role that you as an individual played in that. So instead of just talking conceptually, say, oh, what you should do is this, what you should do is that. Talk about what you actually did and the role that you as an individual played, and then take that through to the outcomes. So you might say what the role you played, and then what the outcome was of that. So how did it bring a benefit? For example, you did some work that actually meant that your team was able to, their velocity within their Scrum team was actually able to accelerate by X number of points a sprint. Try to bring it to something tangible that someone who's actually reading your resume can go, oh, wow, you actually did this. And then this was the outcome from there. But again, I just really want to emphasize the role that you played and how you actually are able to step up and take some initiative and how you were able to show some leadership. Even if you were just part of the team, what's something that you did to try and take the leadership in the role that you were using? So instead, what I'll often see is people say, I participated in this program, or I was involved in this program. What we're really looking for is the role that you played. How did you step up? And what did you actually, as an individual, what did you deliver? So that's what I'm looking for.
Perfect. And Jacky, anything to add?
No, 100% what Brad just said. And then the obvious within that constraint is research the company you're going to work for. I hope you guys know this, but research the person that's going to interview you, research the role that you're being interviewed for, research, if you can, what that role looks like at that company. Titles can be titles. So you want to understand what the expectations are at that company. And then back to what Brad said, try to be thinking ahead of time. What is something that you have done in the past that would be beneficial, or you can make the link to the current role, and then also, as Brad said, quantify it. Something tangible. I contributed X, Y, and Z, and the result was a 6% improvement in efficiency, or the system was up 89% of the time instead of 81, or 50% less security breaches, whatever, but find a way to quantify it. And also, not just I participated, here's what I contributed. Here is what I personally, how I helped this process or this business outcome.
Perfect. And before I ask the next question, I just have a question for you, Jacky. It's for SAS. It's just on what are some of the qualities needed as an aspiring data analyst at SAS?
Oh, well, is that a personal question or an industry question?
I take it how you can.
Yeah. Well, and I'm data analyst is somewhat broad. If we think about data engineering, for me personally, a data engineer, obviously you have to understand how to read requirements, but I think, and this is maybe a personal thing, you have to go, for me, you need to go a little bit on either side of being a data analyst. You have to be able to go to where the data is coming from and understand how that operates. Then you have to understand what you need to do with the data. And then also, me as a model developer or a model ops person, I'm receiving that data from you. So you have to be prepared to understand what it is and how I'm going to use it. So that when you create it, you are taking that information into consideration when you're building it. Again, data analyst is I'm kind of talking about a data engineer who's doing transformations, who's looking for bias and unfair practices in data. So that might be slightly different than what this person might be analyzing data for the purpose of use. So it's a little broad, but obviously attention to detail, thoroughness, a lot of the same things. I guess I have certain qualities that I would look for in an individual, and Brad mentioned earlier that a lot of things can be taught. It's the intangible things that I'm interested in: work ethic, collaboration, that kind of thing, where I can probably teach you how to be a data analyst with respect to SAS. It's the intangible things that I think are what make a person above and beyond. We've all met somebody in our life where if you hand something over to them, it will get taken care of. They're not going to ask you a million questions. They're not going to make your life miserable. It's not going to be 3 weeks late. They might run into problems. They'll figure it out. They'll find solutions. So, but it's like, okay, I know I can give this to Emily and it's going to happen. And that's not just because, Emily, you know marketing. It's because you do all these other things that make you good at your job, that I know I can count on you, and it's not going to suck the life out of me in the meantime. So that was a very obscure answer, but that's what I got.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks so much. So we've only got a couple more questions that I'd like to ask. So the last question on the interview topic is just about what questions should they ask before joining a tech company to determine whether it's right for them as well. So we'll start with Brad for this one.
Yes. I'm going to answer. This is a fairly easy one because this happened to me recently. And when I got asked this question, it sort of blew me away and I was very impressed. So the question I was actually asked was, now, look, we're a consulting organization, which means we deal with a number of different organizations. And the question I got asked was, are there any planned organizations that you're looking for me to start working with straight away? Now, so the way I would actually ask the question is to say, what are some of the activities you'd be looking for me from when I commence with your organization? So start talking with some of that confidence that how am I going to start being able to add value from an early stage? I would actually give that advice as a question to ask, but I would always say ask questions. When you get to that point where an interviewer asks you, do you have any questions? Please always have something to ask.
Perfect. And Jacky, anything to add?
I would also reinforce to ask questions, and I would also reinforce that you're asking questions to make sure it's a good fit for you. It's when you go to an interview, we all think about selling ourselves to whoever it is we're speaking with, but this is a two-way street, and you need to be happy there. So you need to ask questions, and one of them would be, what kind of work am I going to be doing immediately? What would my first assignment be? Because you need to know, is that the kind of work that I want to be doing? I'm not sure, I guess some of those things as well, again, I'm not sure they're specific to a tech company. Those are things you just want to understand no matter what job you're taking. It might sound, and this might be, I'm not sure, I'd be interested in Brad's opinion, might be somewhat contrary to the confidence thing, but I'd want to know if I'm just coming out of school, I'd want to know if I have a mentor, if I have some kind of a buddy that I can rely on to help me finesse my way through this new world that I'm frankly completely uninformed about. And I will also say I'm thinking, and we may get to this about, going from university to the working world, it's going to be quite a change, and it's going to be very different. And to have somebody that you can consider your new BFF that's looking out for your interests and can help you navigate those waters, I think is beneficial. The other thing I would say, this is more tactical, when you're trying to decide if you want the job, is I would be curious about the tenure of the people working there. What's the average length of stay for people who work there? Because tech can be very jumpy. People jump around jobs a lot. And if it's an unhappy environment for any reason, one could be you just don't like the job. That's okay. But there are environments that are not very pleasant for people to work in tech. And you want to know that if people are always short timers at a certain organization, you might want to be aware of that ahead of time.
Awesome.
Agree 100%.
So, yeah.
100%, yes.
Awesome. And to wrap up for the final question today, last question is, do you have any advice that you would like to share with students or graduates? Any final advice, as well as open job opportunities at your companies? So I'll go to Jacky first.
My advice would be prepared to be a little overwhelmed. When you move from university, as I just kind of foreshadowed, you move to university to an organization, it's going to be very, very different. Classes are dedicated to certain topics. When you go into the workforce, you're going to have to integrate all of those skills. You're going to have to integrate them all together towards a common goal. and business problem, your end goal oftentimes is not going to be nearly well as it's never going to be defined as clearly and succinctly it is in your university classes. The other thing I would say, and I'm guessing Fred will agree based on his previous comments, the group dynamics are going to represent the worst group project you ever had in university. Because now you're going to be working with people from all different backgrounds, all different agendas, all different experiences. So, and all of you have to work together towards a common goal. So you're going to be a little overwhelmed. The other thing I would say is, for me, don't come in guns blazing. Come in, sit back, listen, watch, observe. How do things work? Who's successful? What are the skills that they're bringing to the table, and what is their approach that makes them so successful? Why do people listen to that person? Why do they respect that person? And then you can start to get a feel for the environment and how to be successful in that environment. That's all.
Would you like to share the job opportunities?
Right now, we have job opportunities for some sales execs. We have what's called a solutions architect or technical architects, which is basically where that's that liaison person where you understand the software and you're trying to go out and understand business problems and how to map the software to that business problem. Some of those some of the jobs that we have right now are with respect to risk. So it would be a risk solutions advisor, which would be specific to the risk industry. We also have we're broadening a lot with respect to cloud, operating on the cloud, which is huge. That's not uncommon. So cloud architects and cloud administrators, we have openings for right now. And account execs, I think I said that already.
Thanks, Jacky.
You're welcome.
I'll pass it to Brad now.
Yeah. In terms of the advice, I don't think I could top how Jacky had actually put that through of how to prepare and how to be ready for what you're looking at. And there's only one thing I would like to add, and that's, don't think you have to do everything when you start an organization. You're going to be one cog in the wheel, so you don't have to take everything on yourself. You'll be part of a team, so I would say use them. Make sure you use your team, because they're going to be helping you as much as you can help them as well. Now, in terms of opportunities within Cognizant, we are always looking for people and looking for the right people as well. We do have a number of roles, and I'm going to be selfish here by saying within my team here as well. So we are looking for people who are in that traditional business analyst role, but who are actually keen to actually explore technology as a part of that work. We are also looking for automation engineers and robotics subject matter experts, but then also within the wider teams, we are looking for people looking for digital experience leads as well. So we're looking for people who are able to actually formulate digital experience. And what we can do is we can actually work with the people here to actually make sure that the opportunities we have, we can actually send through for you, so that we can share those as well. And do you want to? Is it the right time to talk about our grad program?
Definitely, go for it.
Okay, so we do run a grad program within Cognizant. We look for 2 intakes a year. So we look at the beginning and midway through the year. The midway has actually already commenced, and we're about to start recruiting for next year's grad program. So we'll just work with the teams here involved to make sure that we can actually share that, so that anyone who's watching this can actually potentially be involved with that.
Definitely. Okay, yeah, so throughout the video, we did have the links up. So, there was the link for Cognizant and also SAS. So make sure you just head to those links. If you struggle to do that, then just head to Grad Australia. You can easily search up their name and their profile will come up. There'll be a bunch of different things on there as well. So not only will you see the job opportunities available, but you'll also get there's videos, there's blog posts, there's day in a life, there's a bunch of things that can really help you kind of get a better look at what it would be like working within one of these companies. So make sure you guys do that. Did either of you have anything to add before I wrap up, or you happy for me to wrap up?
No, I just want to thank you, Emily, for the opportunity to talk to such some passionate people who are keen to explore how to move into technology.
Awesome.
Agree.
No, thanks so much
you.
to you guys. You've given some very inspiring and great insights that I'm sure will be very appreciated. So to wrap up today's session, thanks again to both of you. For anyone who is watching and hasn't set up a profile on Grad Australia, make sure you check out Grad Australia, set up your profile so that you get notified of open job opportunities. Take a look at all the different advice we have. We have so much different advice. There's literally advice for interviews. There's advice for technical interviews, career planning, different industries. There's so much there. There's also a bunch of different job opportunities that you can take a look at. And we host these career talk sessions on a weekly basis. We do them for all sorts of industries. So we've got, for example, we have pharmacy next week. So make sure if you know anyone who is in university or any recent graduates who are, wanting to get more out of their career and get some guidance, then tell them to go and check out the webinars we have up ahead, because it's a really great opportunity for them to ask questions and hear from people working in the industry. The next one we have coming up is on the 24th of August, which is it's for pharmacy. It's your guide to internships and opportunities and careers with Ramsay Healthcare. So thank you so much for both of you for joining in today. And thanks for everyone for listening. If you want to watch this back, just head to our social media, or you'll get an email shortly with the video as well. So yeah, if you guys have any questions or you need to reach out to anyone, feel free to contact us, shoot us a message on our socials or send us an email and someone will get back to you. So thanks so much everyone for joining, and we'll see you another time.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.